5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
This is About Space, America's return to space, with news and information on our U.S. space program. Is your host of About Space, David Denard.
Welcome and thanks for joining me today as we continue with our series, Return to the Moon to Stay. And for all of you guys who like fast cars and jets, as I used to say, don't touch that dial. The Saturn V has been the world's most powerful rocket, one that took our astronauts to the moon. And today we'll examine the next generation of rockets. It's called the SLS. Next on About Space Today. Are you ready to fly away on a dream vacation? For cruises and all-inclusive resort vacations, call D&D Cruise and Tours at 877-747-8631. That's 877-747-8631. And see us on Facebook, D&D Cruise and Tours, where your dreams become a reality. NASA's plan to reach the Moon and Mars will depend on huge boosters. The Space Launch System, or SLS, is an advanced launch vehicle that provides the foundation for human exploration beyond Earth's orbit. The integrated SLS and Orion spacecraft configured will stand 322 feet, taller than the Statue of Liberty, and will produce 8.8 million pounds of maximum thrust, 15% more thrust than the Saturn V rocket. With more on that story is Rick Potluck from our Washington Bureau.
David, in this episode of About Space Today, some very smart NASA engineers and managers are going to introduce us to the Artemis program's SLS, or the Space Launch System. Catherine Crow, a systems engineer at the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, will give us an introduction to the SLS.
NASA's Space Launch System, also known as the SLS, is a powerful rocket that can carry the Orion spacecraft as well as crew and large payloads to the moon. The SLS rocket is powered by twin 5-segment solid rocket boosters in a core stage with 4 RS-25 engines. 2 massive tanks hold hundreds of thousands of gallons of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen to provide propellant to the 4 engines. SLS is the only rocket that can move us forward to explore the moon, establish a permanent base there, and develop the technologies to take American astronauts to Mars and beyond.
Chandler Sherman, a cryogenic tank subsystem manager at the Michoud Assembly Facility in New Orleans, explains how the SLS rocket's core stage will be tested and certified fit for the flight to the moon.
The core stage is the backbone of the propulsion system that helps launch the rocket to the moon. Stages for the first and second Artemis missions are being built right here at Michoud in New Orleans. Green Run is a series of tests during which test conductors will bring the core stage to life for the first time. Propellant will flow through the cryogenic tanks, flight computers and avionics will operate all the systems, and 4 RS-25 engines will fire, all at the same time. Green Run testing formally validates the core stage's design, certifying it ready for launch. The next time the core stage hardware comes together will be on the launch pad at Kennedy.
Amanda Gary Jensen is Boeing's senior production manager, and she explains what the core stage of the SLS actually is.
The core stage is the spine of the SLS rocket. It's 2 huge propellant tanks and 4 RS-25 engines provide over 2 million pounds of thrust to launch NASA's Artemis missions to the moon. Because of the size of the hardware, the core stage components are connected in 3 major joints. First, we make the forward skirt to the liquid oxygen tank to the inner tank to form the top part of the rocket, or the forward joint. Then horizontally, we make the liquid hydrogen tank, followed finally by the engine section. To properly align the flanges as they come together, we use live photogrammetry on 6 bolt locations to make sure they properly align.
Kent Chernecki, a Stages Associate Manager at NASA, explains the SLS EUS, or the Exploration Upper Stage, and how the EUS makes the rocket more powerful and allows more cargo to be sent to the moon.
EUS is in the Block 1B configuration, and following Artemis 3, it will be able to send much larger payload capacity towards the moon. The EUS design makes the SLS rocket for later Artemis missions more powerful. With EUS, we can send more mass to the moon to enable a cargo capability for sustained presence on the moon so humans can explore more of deep space, including Mars. It can send over 37 metric tons to translunar injection. That includes the Orion, its 4 astronauts, and 10 metric tons of co-manifested payload. EUS has successfully passed its preliminary design review. We've done the work in the factory to prepare the tooling for hardware production, and we're moving towards critical design review.
Alex Mattress is a software developer for the SLS avionics at the Marshall Space Flight Center. Alex will explain how the rocket's flight computer's avionics help steer, fly, track, and guide the rocket.
The avionics are the brains behind the Space Launch System rocket. They are the computers and electrical systems that fly, track, guide, and steer the vehicle throughout its launch and flight. The avionics make the rocket fly by guiding and directing all of its thrust power. The rocket launches with more than 8 million pounds of thrust from its engines and boosters, and with the help of its brains. We present the flight computers with thousands of scenarios to detect all different types of faults and still make sure the vehicle flies safely. You can't run that many tests on actual hardware, so these scenarios are very valuable. Using the software that I help write, I get to watch the SLS rocket launch nearly every day. The only thing that could rival it is the actual Artemis mission to the moon.
Don Stanley is the Deputy Director for Cross-Program System Integration, also at the Marshall Flight Center. Don's going to explain how each NASA center works together to make the Artemis program work.
Building a rocket that's more powerful than the Saturn V rocket takes thousands of people. I'm part of a team at Marshall that ensures the Space Launch System rocket works with the other critical systems needed to send astronauts to the moon on the Artemis missions. Every NASA center supports this powerful rocket, but each in its own specific way. It's like a football team. Every center has its own position, but we're all on the same team. SLS and Orion are the backbone of NASA's deep space exploration. Johnson Space Center manages the Orion program, and Kennedy Space Center oversees the ground system operations, which will launch Artemis 1.
Well, after today's episode of About Space Today, you're on your way to becoming a rocket scientist. Sort of. Reporting from the Washington News Bureau, I'm Rick Potlock.
Rick, a rocket scientist? I'm just glad to drive a car. And stand by for my special announcement.
50 years ago, we pioneered a path to the moon. A trail we blazed, cut through the fictions of science, and showed us all what was possible.
It's very pretty out here.
We're going.
We are going.
We are going.
We're going.
Are you going? To join us to be among the first to witness American astronauts to be launched from American soil on American rockets from the Kennedy Space Center. We are taking reservations.
Yes, we are taking reservations, and I'd like to introduce you to our host hotel, the Best Western on the ocean at Cocoa Beach. Here's manager Jamie Trujillo.
The best part of hospitality is the people, and the comments that we get, whether it's about the fire pit or the pool area or about the beaches, the ones that resonate and the ones that mean the most to me are the comments about the staff and the interactions and the engagement they've had with either myself or a member of our breakfast team or someone at the front desk. So when a guest leaves here and they leave with that positive emotion and that memory, that's what our business is really about.
Best Western Cocoa Beach, a resort you'd come back to year after year. Well, all it takes, by the way, is a $25 per person deposit to guarantee your reservation today. There's just 1 week remaining to register. Thank you for joining me today, and like us and follow us on Facebook, and be sure to share our program with your family and friends. And be sure to join us on Thursday for a special report from our Washington Bureau Chief, Rick Potlock, at a news conference with the astronauts. For launch details and more, see our Facebook page, aboutspace.today. Join us next week for NASA's Commercial Partners. I'm David Denault, and this has been About Space Today.